Welcome to Love and Lies Audio, where we present you with the stories behind the untold tales of love, lies, and life after cheating. All breakups have a voice, and theirs is here. The minute I saw her, I knew that something had shifted. I couldn't quite place it at the time, couldn't understand it. She smiled, the same smile I used to love, but it didn't touch her eyes. And when our eyes locked, I saw a flicker, fear, guilt, and my gut dropped. It's the sort of feeling you get when the ground has been pulled out from under you and all you can do is cling for the crash. I should have understood. The little things were there, the sidelong glances, the undertone of tension in her voice when she spoke to me, the sudden need for space. I thought I was going crazy. I kept telling myself I was imagining things. But deep within, my gut was screaming otherwise. I had always trusted her. Probably more than I trusted myself. I had thought that love was something about giving freely, believing freely. But that trust, that openness, had betrayed me, and she had taken advantage of it. I learned it not in drama, not in an argument that would be cut into a film scene, but quietly, like slow poison into my system. I found the messages late one night, accidentally, when I was looking for a paper on her computer. It wasn't hard to find, really. Here it was, clear and plain as day. Weeks of secret dates, furtive conversations, snickers shared that weren't mine. The names, the dates, the phrases, they burned into me, each one a tiny knife cutting through the life we had built. At first, I was furious. Pure, raw anger that made me clench my fists and wince at the pain in my jaw. I envisioned myself lashing out at her, yelling, crying, demanding explanations. But as I read the messages, a curious calm settled over me. Not the calm of acceptance, but the calm of calculation. I knew something valuable. If I lashed out, if I made my pain public, she would win. She would know she had power. She would know that she counted enough to hurt me. And she already did. So I did the opposite. I started quietly. I didn't yell. I didn't rage. I didn't threaten. I pretended not to notice. All smiles I gave her, all words I spoke were calculated, polite, even, uninvolved. It was difficult initially. I longed to scream, to bawl, to shatter. But with every instance that emotion swelled in me, I told myself, patience. Let her see what she's lost. Allow her to feel the consequences of what she's done without ever speaking a word against it. That was my blade. Silent, icy, unbreakable. The first few weeks were hardest. I talked less, avoided long conversations, withdrew into myself. I spent more time with friends, rediscovering parts of myself that had been dormant. I committed to work, to exercising, to hobbies. Slowly, I created a life that wasn't about her, a life that she could no longer control or breach. And she noticed. I could see it in the small gestures she made at trying to connect with me. She tried to touch my arm as she went by, nudge me in the kitchen, laugh harder than she needed to at something she wished I would see. But I didn't see it. Or at least, I caught it and sidestepped it. Each gesture wore her down, at her self-assurance. She had assumed I would forgive, that I would bend, that I would beg. I didn't. She pulled the old trick. Tears, vulnerability, the soft voice that once I adored. "I'm so sorry," she said softly, attempting to breach the wall I'd built around myself. I didn't flinch. I nodded and looked away. I felt her anger simmering, her need for a reaction, and she got none. My friends caught on to the change too. They commented on how intense I had gotten, how calm, how nearly untouchable. I realized then that my revenge wasn't in fighting, wasn't in fury, wasn't in humiliation for all to see. It was in thriving. It was in living in full and unrepentant color while she was reduced to watching and being powerless. And powerlessness, I knew, cut deeper than anything. Weeks turned into months. I discovered more of the world, new faces, new parts of life left behind. I became more confident, more interesting, more alive. And with every smile I offered to another, every laugh without her, she began to feel the burn. She tried to win me back quietly, asking about my day, commenting on things that I did, seeking jealousy. But my indifference was complete, absolute. Its most delicious aspect was not the fact that I disobeyed her. It was the transformation of her. The culpable sneaking around she attempted to hide, the careful observation of my life, the hesitant inquiring as to who I was spending time with. She had believed betrayal would hurt me, would make me desperate. It made me unapproachable. And that inapproachability caused her to realize the cost of what she had done in a manner words never could. I did not pause my life for her. I did not alter my habits. I kept on eating at the restaurants that I enjoyed, attending the events that I wanted to attend, and following my passion that brought me satisfaction. Every step was quiet, unseen vengeance. Every move I made without her was a message. I am complete, I am living, and I am no longer yours. Her forays became bolder. She was bolder, more demanding. One night, she attempted to seduce me with all the ancient lore of the past. She laughed, caressed me, whispered my name. I could see the ancient flames of lust rising, but I drowned them. Lust with no constraint is weakness. I was serene, smiling graciously but still beyond her reach, and I saw fear for the first time in her eyes. This was what I had been waiting for, the realization that no tears, no seduction, no begging could wipe out the distance I had made. My coldness wasn't cruelty, it was power, and she had lost control. She had given it up to me by misjudging what I was capable of, holding my head, standing tall, respecting myself. The months went by. Friends and acquaintances noted my glow, my confidence, my energy. She watched, helpless, as I was living my life to its fullest potential. Every laugh, every success, every small victory was a knife, cutting her to pieces, reminding her of what she had lost. And yet, the whole time, I never once shouted. Never once did I humiliate her. I didn't have to. My life spoke more eloquently than anything. I went high, and what I'd done was created the perfect revenge. She knew what she'd lost in every glance, every missed opportunity, every thrill she could no longer command. It wasn't sudden, and it wasn't dramatic in the old style. There was no confrontation, no showdown, but every day, every step, every choice was a statement of a life reclaimed. I had been through the pain and alchemized it into power, into presence, into strength, and she could feel it. Oh, she could feel it. Once the first year passed, she no longer attempted to reach me. She had discovered that the man she had betrayed was vanished, replaced by a harder, colder, more vital person than she could ever hope to control. I was a shadow of what I could have been with her, but a shadow of strength and not of defeat. I spent my days in muted pride, knowing that the best revenge was not punishment, it was change. She had underestimated me, and in underestimating me, she had given me the gift of rebirth. I thrived, I blossomed, I laughed, and all achievement murmured to her in secret, "You can't hurt me any longer." And that is when I realized for all of me, indifference isn't emptiness. Indifference is strength. Indifference is victory. And in making her feel the loss, I had achieved the ultimate revenge. The days melted into weeks, yet each moment was more intense than the last. I had discovered a rhythm of detached control, strolling through my existence as if the betrayal had been a distant, irrelevant recollection. But under the calm surface, a storm was gathering, not in me, but in her. That was the subtle art of revenge. Let them ruin themselves while you grow stronger. She began to test me in ways I had never anticipated. Small provocations at first, questions about my whereabouts, comments on new people in my life, insinuations designed to ignite jealousy. I was not affected. A polite nod, a bland smile, a carefully modulated tone. Every encounter was a lesson in self-control, for her, not for me. I did not need to prove anything. She needed to learn what she had lost. She paid a strategic visit one night. She appeared at my apartment door uninvited, in what used to stop my heart cold. Her perfume filled the air, a memory, sharp and intoxicating. I felt the awkwardness in the air, the silent plea in her eyes. I greeted her warmly, giving nothing, no suggestion of invitation. "Can we talk?" she said, her voice trembling slightly. I nodded toward the sofa and rose, my posture rigid, my expression unreadable. She sat, her hands clasping each other, searching for any sign of weakening I might show. But there was none. "I didn't want it to happen," she whispered, the words trembling on the edge of desperation. "I made a mistake." I nodded slowly. "I understand. Accidents happen." My voice was even, detached, clinical even. The rage that had once bubbled in my veins was now a tool, sharpened and invisible. I had no need of argument, of supplication, of confrontation. The silence between us was more potent than any tirade. She tried again, leaning forward, attempting to touch my arm. "I still love you," she whispered. I drew back slightly, raising an invisible barrier she could not breach. I looked over her head, out the window at the city skyline, at the life I was creating, at the freedom I had won back. She knew in that moment, her love alone could not reach me. The following weeks were a subtle dance of presence and absence. I moved through my life with intention, pursuing interests, rejoining old friends, and embracing opportunities that I had previously ignored. Each success, each pleasure, each shared laugh without her was a quiet hammer blow to her pride, and she noticed. I saw it in the way her eyes followed me across the room, the hesitant pauses in her speech when she wanted me to look her way, the careful observation of my phone and online status. She was trying to reassert control, to manipulate, to provoke. But I was impenetrable. She was confronted daily with the reality she had constructed. I was no longer hers to break, no longer hers to manipulate, no longer hers to hurt. The emotional tension between us grew. She'd invite herself to things, attempting to stage an encounter, to get a reaction. I'd attend with friends, committed to the fullest, alive to the fullest, radiating with a confidence she could no longer penetrate. Her eyes would scan for me, searching, longing, but finding nothing. The emptiness of my indifference was smothering her. It wasn't cruelty, it was power. She waylaid me in the kitchen one evening, a strained casualness masking her agitation. "I saw you with her," she said, naming the name of a mutual friend she'd long suspected. She was searching for indignation, confrontation, maybe jealousy. I merely raised my eyebrow and smiled cordially. "Yes, I spent time with her," I replied evenly. "We had a pleasant conversation." Her face flushed, her hands trembling slightly. "And you didn't think to inform me?" I shook my head slowly. "I didn't have to. My life is not yours to dictate." The realization hit her then, a bitter wave of understanding. She had lost control of me completely. She could not control my emotions, my time, or my attention. She had created a man immune to her lies, immune to her manipulation, immune to the guilt she herself carried. The months became a psychological battleground. She wavered between attempts at seduction, emotional appeals, and subtle sabotage. Each effort was more desperate than the last. I navigated it all with grace, never once screaming, never once angry, never once allowing the past to dictate my present. My revenge was not in chaos, it was in control, in thriving, while she destroyed herself inwardly. She accosted me one afternoon in the park, that spot which had been ours. She tried tears, trembling lips, outstretched hands in pleading. "Please, I don't want to lose you," she murmured. I looked at her, really looked, and did not feel desire's pangs, the cracks in my armor. I saw a woman desperate, falling apart, coping with the consequences of her actions. I felt nothing but serene. "You already have," I said simply, turning away from her to look at the sunset, my back an impenetrable barrier she could not crack. Her reaction was subdued, but lovely. The slump of her shoulders, the opening of her mouth in surprise, the trembling step as the reality broke upon her. I had not needed to scream, to degrade, or to retaliate in the usual manner. My presence, my well-being, my unbending dignity was the punishment. Weeks turned into months, and my life flourished. Doors I never had the courage to open now welcomed me. I traveled, met people, achieved goals, and cultivated happiness that was entirely my own. And wherever I went, wherever I smiled, wherever I succeeded, she felt the sting. She tried once more to reach me, a last resort at reconciliation. I sat, polite, nodding, allowing her words to wash over me like a distant echo. When she had finished, I stood, brushed my coat smooth, and smiled quietly. "I wish you all the best," I said to her. The words were soft, but the implication was firm. The past is past, and I am beyond your reach. Her face fell. You're not angry?" I shook my head. "There is no anger anymore. Only clarity." The finality broke over her like a wave she couldn't fight. She knew then that she had lost not just me, but the man I had become, a man untouchable, successful, and resistant to her attempts at gaining power back. And that was the best revenge. I did not need to confront her with anger. I did not need to yell or humiliate. I did not need to weave complicated scenarios or dramatic confrontations. I had done something far more annihilating. I had transcended her control, her lies, and her presence. I had made her feel the loss, totally and fully, with nothing but my presence. The months passed. She vanished from my life, not because of bitterness, but because she could no longer interact with me without confronting the reality she had constructed. I moved through my days with a regained sense of purpose, laughter returning to my voice, joy increasing in my life. And in her absence, I found something apocal. The power of indifference is absolute. It is quiet, calm, and more devastating than any tantrum. It leaves the other person with nothing but the shadows of what they lost, while you are, whole and vividly unscarred by their past betrayals. In that moment of quiet strength, I felt a newfound freedom, a freedom she had broken but could never reclaim from me again. And as I walked into the future, alive and free, I knew this. The greatest revenge is not confrontation, nor tears, nor anger. It is rising, surviving, and proving to the world and to the one who betrayed you that life moves on and that you are unstoppable. And I thrived, I flourished, I laughed, I loved, completely, guardedly, and on my own terms. A reminder every day that indifference is not absence, it is power. And she would never again have the power to reach me, to manipulate me, or to destroy me. The victory in silence, based on patience, dignity, and unshakable self-respect, was complete. She had learned, painfully and irretrievably, that what she had done had consequences she could not undo. And I, finally freed from the shadow of betrayal, had gained something infinitely more. Myself, whole and inviolate. The months passed, and my existence expanded in ways that I never believed possible. I walked through the city with an unshakable confidence, a quiet strength that emanated from each step, each word, each glance. She had tried to intrude, to reach back, to challenge me, but every attempt was repelled by nothing but calm, nothing but impassive indifference. I became invulnerable, and the comprehension weighed her down like an inexorable tempest. She arrived one evening, unwanted as she ever was, but this time differently. There was a tremble in her gait, a desperation in her gaze that had never existed before. She lingered at my doorstep, half hoping I would let her in, half hoping to catch me off guard. I did not. I did not even glance up from the novel I read. We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling a little. I placed a firm bookmark between the pages, closed the book quietly, and finally looked at her. My eyes were steady, unshakable, uninviting. "Yes, we do," I stated flatly. "You need to understand that the past cannot be undone." Her mouth opened in a helpless protest. "But I don't want to hear excuses," I interrupted softly. The voice wasn't harsh. It was deliberate, chill, calculating. She flinched. She had expected anger, fighting, pleading. What she received was firm control. I rose and gestured toward the living room. "Sit if you must, but get this. Nothing you say will change the fact that your actions have consequences." She sat, hands clasped together, eyes wide and intrusive. She wanted a reaction, any reaction that would indicate to her that she still had control over me. But I didn't give her one. I rested against the windowsill, eyes fixed on the lights of the city, the life I'd rebuilt without her interference. I made a mistake," she said, too softly to hear. "Yes," I said, voice steady, nearly tender. "You did, and you will live with it." She began to cry, but I did not move, did not soothe, did not offer comfort. The power dynamic had shifted completely. I was no longer weak, no longer susceptible, no longer hers in any sense she could comprehend. For the rest of the hour, she tried everything she could imagine, begging her pardon, guilt-tripping, even attempting to appeal to my emotions. I was not moved. Every word she spoke was met with the same calm awareness, the same silent detachment. Her rage grew visibly. She had underestimated the strength of betrayal, the force of silence tempered in hardihood, and the ruinous force of utter indifference. When she realized at last that nothing she could say or do would break through the screen I had set up, her expression twisted in bitterness and incredulity. I rose, adjusted my jacket, and walked towards the door, the finality of my action echoing in her mind. "This is goodbye," I said harshly. She gasped. You're not going to take me back." I turned all the way around to regard her, my expression serene but resolute. "No, never. I have moved on. You have lost your place in my life. Nothing you do can change that." The words stung like ice slaps to her face. She had expected argument, anger, even redemption. What she experienced instead, though, was a man who had transcended her adultery entirely, a man who had regained his life, his dignity, and his authority. She made one last desperate appeal, her voice trembling. I love you. I didn't mean to." I shifted my head slowly. Love won't cut it when respect is lost. You had the option of betraying me, crossing lines that can never be repaired. I am beyond your reach now." She sat frozen still, the weight of realization bearing down. For the first time, she knew the sheer extent of what she had lost. Not rage, not revenge, not humiliation, but a calm, full-throated nothingness that she could never fill in. I had given her no target to attack, no bargaining chip, no scheme to manipulate. Only the unmoving truth. She had been replaced by a life lived to the full and freely. Weeks passed, and she attempted to insinuate herself into my existence in quiet methods, calls, texts, visits at mutual friends, but each try was answered with polite brush-off, guarded reserve, and explicit boundary. Her perseverance gave way, her actions more desperate, her pride broken, and I remained aloof. I exercised my freedom to the maximum. I saw the world, learned, smiled, and developed new passions that had slept over the years. Every achievement, every joyful moment, every bond I forged in her absence was a silent, unspoken revenge. She sat at a distance, the sting of loss as a shadow figure, unable to take away the life I had created. The emotional price to her became evident in small ways. Hesitant looks, whispered evasions, fleeting moments of vulnerability when she thought I wouldn't notice. She had thought she could control me back into submission, but the man she had betrayed no longer existed. I had transformed, strengthened by betrayal, hardened by indifference, and owned by the learned skill of self-respect. Months after, one evening, she appeared at an exhibition I had gone with friends to at an art gallery. She stood at the edges, her eyes scanning the crowd for mine. I approached her in a normal way, a polite nod, a nod of recognition. She winced a little, the edge of violence reduced to the acid knowledge of my calm. "Hello," she spoke in a whisper. I smiled gently, a gesture lacking warmth but replete with finality. "Hello," I replied. "I hope you are well." Her lips quivered, a try at greeting, at connection. I offered none. I walked past her, joining my friends in line, utterly absorbed into the life I had rebuilt, utterly untouched by her presence. The look in her eyes was cold, pinched together in a combination of regret and confusion and wrenching clarity. The weeks turned into months, and she faded from my daily consciousness. Not in anger, not because I hated her, but simply because my existence no longer had space for her within it. The ultimate triumph had been achieved. She saw the extent of her defeat, not in violence or upheaval, but in the peace, fruitful life of the man she had betrayed. And finally, peace. Peaceful, unbreakable peace, which had been conceived of dignity, self-worth, and the knowledge that betrayal would never come near me again. I had reclaimed everything she had tried to take from me, my joy, my authority, and my liberty. She would never be a part of my life anymore. She would never play games with me, push me around, or influence me. And with that truth, I found an unexpected happiness, a liberation no war, no annihilation, no blast of emotions could ever bring. In the end, indifference was omnipotent. I had been forced to confront the consequences of my actions, and I had emerged unshattered, flourishing, and unencumbered. My life was a personal victory against adversity, an unvoiced confirmation that betrayal is not characteristic of the betrayed, only what we will do about it. And so I continued, completely alive, completely free, completely unattainably. She had found out too late that things are lost forever, that some victories cannot be redeemed. My revenge was accomplished, not in anger or retribution, but in the soft, relentless power of a life lived better than ever without her. Every smile, every success, every second of joy reminded her of what she could no longer obtain from me. And that was a victory greater than any oration, any debate, any appeal to sentiment ever could give. The last lesson in betrayal: do not seek revenge through destruction. Seek it through self-mastery, education, and the relentless pursuit of a life she can no longer access. Make her regret all the choices, make her hurt with loss, and allow your own life to be the indelible proof of your strength. For it is in the end the greatest revenge of all to live, to thrive, and never look back. Thanks for staying with us until the end. If your life has exhibited loyalty, betrayal, or strength in ways that others might not understand, leave a note below and share your story. And don't forget to subscribe to Love and Lies Audio, where each story reminds us that quiet doesn't mean defeat, and quiet endings can be the loudest victories.